Welcome back to Deep Thoughts, ladies and gentlemen. You're about to see me smoke a cigar with a completely disintegrated wrapper here. Should be very interesting. So as you can see today, we're going to talk about something very, 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 very important for everybody. If you're capable of doing this, which is going to be managing your reactions to things, then you might find this an interesting observation of others. But if you're like many of us, you've struggled in the past with something happening around you, to you, either physically, mentally, spiritually, and you find yourself having reacted to it. And then a little time passes. Could be 10 seconds, could be 10 days, could be 10 years. And you're like, oh God, that was not my best moment. It's probably a good episode to file under things I was never told when I was young that found out later. It was very important. However, depending on your success with this, you may still struggle with it today. You may struggle with it in a big way. You may struggle with it in a small way. But it simply has to do with people that react quickly and people who react slowly. And we're not talking about those kind of reactions like someone's going to punch you in the face and you moved out of the way. That's a good, fast reaction. We're usually talking about the way that we are now having any gap that we have between our mouth and our brain, which is something Americans are taught to shorten as small as possible, right? We're supposed to speak our minds. That's our freedom. That's what American flag means is if I think a thought, I should just say it. I shouldn't think. I know that in at least the UK, can't speak for many other countries, there's literally an education, at least if you're my age and up, about probably 40 and up, I'd say, or probably more 50 and up. You're supposed to, as a part of your etiquette, slowly think about what's going on, pause, and then react. And there's still some wonderful people in the United States who were raised in different areas by different families that do imbue their children with this. But since this is sort of the cornerstone of how we're being had in social media, and then we take that bad habit because you are good at what you do, right? If you do a bunch of things badly, that's what you're good at, even if you don't mean to. And sometimes just raising this in your consciousness is all you need to think it through. But there are incredible chess moves that you can turn life into where it goes beyond just avoiding certain things or reacting better. You can start to see patterns of how the world is trying to manipulate you. Because let's face it, I was just telling a friend of mine today, Twitter and Facebook are blowing up recently in an absolutely hilarious way for absolutely gullible people. They're asking things like, what was your first car? What was your first rock concert that you ever saw? What was the other ones? Just a bunch of security questions for your fucking passwords, man. And people are just like, oh, let me doubly tell you what's going on, If you have fallen for that crap any time recently, and I fell for the concert one because I thought it was a friend of mine, and the problem is they're all in cahoots with this game. So what used to happen? If you posted something in your homepage feed, I got it in my feed, and I replied to you on your feed. So what Facebook has done to open up this scam, to help the criminals, what Twitter has done to help the criminals, but I think this is kind of the way Twitter already worked, was that if you post an answer to someone else's group that is public, and they answer it, it goes into your feed, and unless you're paying attention, you're replying to a global 50,000 answer post by some scam company. They don't even have to pay for it. They just sucker you into it. Now, I have a lot of rocker friends in the industry, and so I think I'm reacting to someone else's, like one of my buddies, just kind of having fun. It wasn't. So what's the game? Well, I'm going to propose there's two sides of this thing. There is the, depending on how old you are, There's the game that you've always been trying to refine as a person in the world. If you're aware of the issue, you get an argument with a friend. You're even young. Then as you get older, the people get older. It's first your parents, then it's your friends, and then it's your lovers, then it's your kids, then it's random strangers. And without the internet ever existing, we still struggle with this one. Someone says something that just riles you up. Maybe they're trying to. Maybe they're pissed off they got caught doing something. You call it out. Did you just do that? And well, you're an asshole. That could happen too. When social media showed up, when the internet showed up and then social media, it was kind of like a little experimentation for all the mind control people out there that have been working to take advantage of you, right? In world history, the internet now is an ancient relic of existence, having probably celebrated, quite frankly, its, I'd say, maybe 26th birthday. If you really think about 1995 being the moment when people were starting to get on the net, starting to understand what a web browser was, I would actually wager it's just a little over 20 years with a milestone of the iMac coming out. Because if you remember, Microsoft almost completely missed the internet. And of course, Dr. Gates goes up and says in the 90s, this speech when they finally realized they'd missed the boat and thought it was going to be a fad, which is a joke. And they realized that their surveillance operating system was going to be deprecated by the intelligence agencies if they allowed people to put more of their stuff online. They weren't going to be this, hey, we can get a bunch of favors by the intelligence agencies by providing an operating system with a backdoor in every single version. So I think that might have been why they were fighting it off. But Jobs shows up, puts out the iMac. It's sexy, it's cool, it's cheap. It comes right out of the box, ready to hit the internet. And that's when we started getting on board. Mostly private enterprise, just you make your own website, just like old radio stations or television stations back in the day. No networks at first. You just went down to your local neighborhood and stood in front of a camera, made up your own show. But within 10 years of television, well, television networks showed up, narratives showed up, control showed up. If you really think of television taking off in the 1950 realm, literally that year, by 1955, they launched Project Mockingbird. Yellow journalism had always existed, but they got into our feeds, and then Marshall McLuhan figured it out, that the more elaborate the medium, the more you're going to be indoctrinated. Same thing happened with the internet. If you think 95 is a good point, by 2005, I think you're just a couple years away from Facebook coming out. I don't exactly know when Facebook's first year was. YouTube was a private company, then gets swallowed up by Google because they can't beat them. Twitter being a divide mechanism to get you to say a bunch of stuff that you're going to regret in a lot of cases, right? And what's interesting is this whole reaction thing has taken a new turn on the internet, right? And we all know about them. Sort of the keyboard warriors. A friend of mine said tonight, he goes, when I used to be on social media, he said I would post things that I really wouldn't say to someone if they were in front of me. And he thought, well, maybe I might give it another try. But if I did, I'd have to have the wherewithal to only post what is something I would say in front of somebody else, to their face. I could add another layer to that, which would be take the person that is most special to you in this world and make sure that if they were over your shoulder, that you wouldn't be embarrassed saying what you're saying to another person. Luckily, I think that even though I've said some outrageous things to people, I definitely would say it to their face. But we all have regrets, right? We all do. Things that we've said. And I think that we have to consciously start putting this in front of us again. Because what it does is the second you establish any type of, maybe you call it your moral, your principles, what you live for, not what you die for, it will curb a little bit of sort of the whole game. You'll look at social media completely different. You look at Twitter and just go, what is the deal here? Again, if you came from a happy utopia planet and you looked at Twitter as your very first feed, you would be Lilu in Fifth Element looking at the television and going, oh my God, you guys have been trying to kill each other ever since you could, which is obviously a false characterization of humanity because our life is run by a bunch of psychopaths that engineer those wars and throw us into those wars. Do organic fights happen between cultures? Sure. And they've happened in droves before any type of truly controlling body took over us. But as we reward ourselves with the trophy of being a modern civilization, it behooves us to actually see that through and to say, well, if being angry is a true definition of being ignorant, then what the fuck is war? War is being an utter child, maybe? Because it's got to be an algorithm where you're carrying the baton of immaturity by every act of being angry. Well, killing someone and justifying it in war, if it can be avoided, would be to carry that baton to the ultimate threshold of any judgment you might have for what is considered maturity and what's considered civilized. I had someone tell me today that something I never knew. If you listen to all the shows, you'll know that I have my own belief system about the drug culture in America and the chain of events that occurred that yielded all the drugs that we have consumed in this country. You know, marijuana has sort of always been in the background. Alcohol has always been in the background. Tobacco has always been in the background. But when the intelligence agencies wanted to drop a drug on America to take advantage of the revenue stream, they picked LSD first. And then they realized, oh my God, nobody wants to fight a war anymore, and everyone wants to be nice, and everyone thinks they met God. And so they launched this defamatory campaign against LSD, associating it with virtually everything that it doesn't do to you. You'll have the craziest PCP, cocaine deaths, meth deaths out there. People are just absolutely out of their mind doing things, and they'll say, well, he's on LSD, having never taken it, having no idea what they're talking about. So that had to be scrubbed out of the industry. But what he told me was that you can't work for the CIA if you've ever taken mescaline because they tap your spine to find out if you've ever taken it. Now, that may be for the normal employee of the CIA. Maybe, if you're right at the top, it doesn't matter anymore. You're an asset regardless. All I could say about that would be that if they had that actual regiment, then they have limited the true capacity of their capabilities. Because if anyone had dropped that stuff and still wants to work for them, they would probably be the most enlightened asset that the agency had ever found. But of course, they're worried about infiltration and secrets being passed out by someone who's pretending to be on board, but is actually a God-fearing hippie, to use their nomenclature. But we react, don't we? It's kind of what we do to defend ourselves, to make sure that the reputation that we have built up as a human being doesn't get compromised. In prison, it is absolutely the way of life. In public, well, it just depends. When you're locked in a box with a bunch of people, if you so much as cower down, you're done. According to the experts who've been through it. You can't even be nice, because if you're nice, like you give away your bread because you don't like it. Someone might see that. They don't realize you're even allergic to that food and you're giving it away because some dude's hungry. If you trade, it's okay. But if you're just constantly giving up your stuff, then they record, oh, that dude's a pushover. And they start leaning on you, according to Big Herc. But in the free world, why don't we care so much? Well, it depends on what kind of town you live in. If you live in a little town, you don't act bad because there's consequences. Your reputation is everything in a small town. But in a big city, oh my God. I go to the same restaurants constantly. The only people I recognize is the help. I've been to a sandwich place 1,000 times. I don't think I've ever seen the same person walk in the door. And yeah, it's a pretty big area, but come on. I go to the same taco place 5 days a week at this point in my life. I can't say I've seen the same person twice. If I have, it's been maybe 2 people. Twice, but not a third time. So if someone's disrespecting you, you could walk away and just go, whatever, I'm never going to see him again. Or if you choose to disrespect them, the rationale is you won't see him again. It's an interesting thing. But the pregnant pause, right? If you ever had an elder in your life that had their shit together, they would teach you about the pregnant pause. Pregnant pause for all things. What's wrong with the quick reaction if that's not the game? Because there might be a situation where you're taking a void comp test and reaction is a factor, right? But you're doing a job interview and someone's asking you questions. It's not your job to reply back as quickly as humanly possible. Your job is to make sure you understand the question. And if you don't understand the question, to have them clarify the question. But then to maybe, that's a good question. Let me think about that. This, boom. It shows you have a methodical process that maybe if you join their company, your process will benefit them. You're polished a lot better than other employees that simply react all the time. Remember Michael Douglas and Falling Down? A businessman goes to McDonald's in the morning and simply wants breakfast, but he's a few minutes late. And when they inform him that he can't get breakfast because it's past the timetable, he just asks them, can't you just get the stuff back out and just do me a favor? Sorry, I'm late. Come here every day. Sorry, sir, can't do that. And after he reaches this point of no return, he blows up, causes a big stink, and then they run after him the rest of the movie. It's an amazing film. Not too many people could pull off that role. That is one of the subliminal factors that might contribute to a bad reaction time or a bad reaction level. You have something that you've been holding in. You're not communicating with people that you got this issue. Could be your kid, your lover, your brother, your sister, whatever. You've been swallowing something that you don't like. And eventually they do it again, they do it again, they do it again. And at one point you just won't take it anymore. And it's not like they're not physically hurting you or anything. You should never put up with abuse, I think, of any kind, no matter what it takes to get away from it. You've got to express yourself very clearly. So we don't want volcanoes inside of us, do we? We're going to have to figure out a way to deal with every single thing that rubs us wrong. But now, those are organic ones where you have family, friends, and things just fester. Things can also be reactionary. But online, it's a lot different, isn't it? This isn't a completely online conversation. That'd be a waste of this topic. But it's definitely an area where I think that once you can see evil for what it is, why would you go back to that room? Let's say you like to go to church, but you change towns, and you go to church, and it's way different than your definition of God, of worship. It's not your kind of thing. Would you go back? Probably not. You'd probably look for another church, wouldn't you? Worst case scenario, you can't find any churches in that town. You grab your Bible and you have your own little church in your backyard. Okay. That's smart thinking. But why is it that we go to these dopamine places and then we come back to these dopamine places? I mean, I'm fascinated on a sociological level of nothing else. But I can definitely, in my later years here, it's much easier for me because I've started to see the game. That it's all about festering one emotion in this world that certain churches worship, that certain organizations love, and that's anger. But it's anger and divide. Hate your fellow man for some particular reason. Believe that there's some place on earth that has resolved all these issues, and it's just you. It's just them that's keeping this divide going. Racism is a big key factor in America at this point because it's been injected into our lives as existing the way that it exists. And obviously it exists around the world. As I said in my cultural racism video, it's all culture. It's not your race. It's not your pigment of your skin. Are there people that are scared of people's skin color? Sure. But I doubt it's just their skin color. It's something that they think that they don't like about that culture of that person. Lumping in everyone into one generalization so that makes it easy. A friend of mine's father is from Africa. He said he visited Africa with his family a couple times. And he said what was interesting is when he got there, he realized that they were telling everybody, beware of that country. We don't hang out with those people. Now, everyone's black there for the most part in these regions that he's discussing. Yeah, they have different genetic traits, probably different appearances and geometry, but they're just as cautious about each other over there because of cultural differences. Some people conduct rituals that they don't have anything to do with. There's, in some areas, they're more like the U.S. South, where there's a lot of superstition. Music is evil. Drinking is truly spirits. Now, these may be accurate assessments of sort of cause and effect models, but it may be that they're more accurate on a metaphorical level, or like you get drunk and you behave badly, and so we call it spirits. Maybe we are possessed, who knows? But I just think it has to do with the human body being attacked and it defending itself, like I always say. Reacting badly is amazing when someone gets drunk. It's a gigantic problem in Los Angeles with some of the best people on planet Earth. They're nice until they drink alcohol. I've been around beautiful people when they're sober. They get drinks in them, and I go from being their absolute blood brother that they literally walk in public and go, this is my actual brother, to saying things to me that very few people in the world would ever have the courage to say to me or would want to say to me because I'm not a bad person. So reacting has a lot to do with your toxicity of your body. Depends on when you do it. Remember drunk texting, right? You put some lovey-dovey emails out there while you're married, but you send it to somebody else. Then your spouse grabs your phone and goes, whoa, who's this? And you wake up the next day going, oh my God, I can't say anything that'll make you feel better. I got drunk and I just reached out to somebody. I've seen this happen several times in Los Angeles. And the more popular you are, the more people that you know, so your Rolodex is full of people, and people solicit you through your phone. So it's almost imperative you change your phone number on an annual basis just to make sure you don't have any hangers-on that can destroy your marriage, right? But what is that process of experiencing some new information or cliche information, aggravating information, even information that you're excited to hear? This enables disinformation to have a substrate. There's an Ethernet, if you will, between human beings, meaning if I carry a concept in my mind of a paradigm and then someone feeds that paradigm some disinformation that's either making me happy or making me sad, I'll immediately spread it if I don't think before I react. I've done this, sending out, things that were disinfo, thinking that they were true, because I didn't pause for a second to do some logical thinking, do some research. Or you'll send something that is very, very true out to the wrong people. People aren't ready to hear that information. I sent a meme the other day that was just a silly meme, but I sent it to a friend, and they were like, that's probably a meme you should send your closest friends. For whatever reason, there was something in it that just made them feel weird. Oops. First, I was like, come on. If you were standing next to me, I could have shown you that. It would have been okay. When I looked at it the next day, I was like, yeah, I see. I finally see it. We have people in the world that we don't like. And there's people that know we don't like them. And we may have very damn good reasons, very documented reasons. Well, let's just call the documented reasons that perhaps are 30, 40, 50 years old, Exhibit A. And they know that they've been hired to actually get this evil person exonerated in the eyes of the people. And so what they need to do is get everyone who has Exhibit A understood to be considered a conspiracy person, a worthless source of disinformation, even though that's a validated claim. So what they do is they take advantage of your dislike for this person and they create some outrageous story that for you is totally believable because you know about Exhibit A. It might even have elements of Exhibit A, probably intentionally has elements of Exhibit A. The whole thing is a ruse. You're being played. But they put it together so that you grab it and then show it to a friend and go, see, this is real. This is Exhibit B, and it matches Exhibit A. Therefore, I am doubly right in disliking this person. And then, I don't know, half a year passes and you realize, oh my God, that was all fake. That was disinformation. Now, your credibility is the boy who called wolf. You have turned into an Aesop fable without even trying. As we are trying to spread truth around the world, guess what's really important? Not to react quickly, to react slowly, to pause, Once you start inserting a pause, which I probably did more in 2020 and then just kept that regimen, I now have people that send me stuff that I used to just automatically forward to folks, and I hold on to it. And what's interesting about it is that, I'll give you an analogy. I have a friend that always presents everyone they meet as a 10. Oh my God, I met this person. They're amazing. Oh my God, level 10, level 10, level 10. Next person. Oh, I met this girl. She's the best. And level 10, level 10. I met this guy, level 10, level 10. Now, the odds that this person is constantly meeting level 10 people is probably not true. And then I will see this person go through an emotional crash. Week goes by. Those 10s weren't 10s. They were 3s. They were 2s. Maybe a 5 on a big day. And they suddenly realize that they have been living in a fantasy world where they actually want this fantasy life that doesn't exist, where everyone's a 10. Then they have an emotional crash, almost like crack cocaine, because they finally got the information, the empirical information, the proof, and the examples that these people aren't 10s. Okay. Same thing goes for information related to red pilling. All right. How many of you think there's a bunch of blue pill people out there that in the next 12 months are going to find out a lot of red pill information and they're not going to be ready? We've sat around and talked about what it's going to be like for them to go through realizations. If God ever came down to this planet and started setting the record straight, oh Lord, to quote a phrase, would there be a gigantic adjustment in religious truth in this world? Some people would probably crawl into a ball for a few days, weeks, years, maybe have to ascend to heaven itself just to take in the information accurately. Some folks will go, oh, yeah, that's cool. Yeah, that's great. Thanks for telling me. Always wanted to meet you. And they move on with their life. You want to be the latter. There's an interesting thing that I mention quite often on the show, which is when I write a film, I absolutely, even before I hand it in to the client at the last second, let's say they're like, well, it shouldn't take more than 2 months to write. And you're like, okay, whatever. I have to, within that last month, step away for no less than 1 week where I don't think about it. I don't talk about it. It doesn't exist. If I can pull off 2 weeks, that's usually my minimum standard. Why? Because I have gotten so close to the subject matter that I've lost sight of the forest. And so that is an analogy for how you can get so embedded in something that you don't ever pull back and take a look at it. Like try to pull things together that you didn't pull together before. There's a ton of theories out there about everything. Some of them might look totally absurd at first, and then you even chastise people about it, and then later you take a better look, and you're like, oh, I see where they got their idea. Yeah, that is interesting, isn't it, right? Then later on you go, oh, but gosh, there's this whole other thing that they didn't mention, and then you talk to them about it, and they're like, well, who cares? And you realize, that's why they continue believing in it, because they didn't step back from it. Once you start proving it wrong, or at least an element of their story wrong, again, it could be there's two things being proposed, maybe round earth or flat earth or something like that, but it's really something in between. But since we are taught to be this binary thing, it's a very comfortable paradigm for the human mind to say there's just two of everything. A duopoly of all paradigm reality. Example, you got the Republicans or the Democrats. There's just that. There's us and them. Mac and Windows. And there's a guy over there with Ubuntu going, yeah, whatever, guys. You keep fighting over there. We have to stop being our own cliches, right? That's my opinion anyway. Inserting the pause will instantaneously give you a better quality reply, no matter if you're wrong or right. As it becomes a habit in your life, here's what you're supposed to do in the pause. Because it's not just a mannerism. Yes, you can give a full indication to someone you're having a conversation with that you have an intellectual method of taking in information, contemplating it, and then replying back. You can insert a pause after every question and seem more intelligent. But if you don't do something in that pause, there's supposed to be a protocol in that pause. Here's the way it works. There's many formulas, but here's the most common one that I'm aware of. Someone's asked you a question. You're pretty sure about the answer. What you do when you pause is that you think, well, I think the answer is 4. But could it be 3? Could it be 5? Could it be 4.1? Reassess. And then answer. Pick your best answer that you know of. You could even qualify an answer as opposed to saying this is exactly what it is. What if in 1984, when asked how many lights there were, I think it's still lights, right? Or how many fingers are holding up or something like that. In Star Trek, it was lights. There were 4. But you know you're talking to some totalitarian person who's trying to break you. They want you to say 5. So all you can say is like, well, I'm not sure, but it appears that there are 4. I mean, that's what it appears to me. You might feel different. What if you gave that reply? And then this numbskull who works for this fascist world, and they, for whatever reason, there was some article that floated around the internet in the last 12 months that said 2 + 2 actually equals 5. I mean, unbelievable how they're trying to take Orwell's thing and shove it down your throat. But if you said it that way, then they're going to go, no, it's 5. Oh, well, okay, then that's how you see it. That's really interesting. Let me hear you say it. Well, you know, I understand that you see 5. Let me hear you say it. Well, like you said, I think you see 5. You're not saying you see 4. You're just acknowledging that they see 5, putting their indoctrination back on them. One of the common things we all run into, and I mean all of us, right, is this notion of judging someone in your answer. Like when I talked to the NASA guy at my buddy's restaurant, who had this super high clearance, and he said, my buddy sits me down with him. He goes, you guys need to talk because he says we didn't go to the moon, and I think he's right. And this guy then breaks eye contact with me because that was his constitution, right? Because I'm staring right at him, man. And there's just something about your eyes, man. If you know what you're talking about, people know. And so he's like, whoa, anyone who thinks we can go to the moon is just an asshole. I think he said fucking asshole. And I just kept looking at him. So he calls me a name, which is obviously the lowbrow, low vibration type of person who is worried about what's coming out of my mouth next. Within 5 minutes, probably within 3 minutes, I gave him a couple examples, and he's like, well, yeah, there's that. You know, and he was done. He was like, yeah, we didn't go. He didn't say, though, we did not go to the moon. I believe that we did not go to the moon. You just made a point that proved that we didn't go to the moon. But that's what he said. Well, there's that. Didn't argue with 2 things I just cut his balls off with, right? Now, I didn't call that guy a name. So the other thing that happened, I think, in that situation, which is not exactly I didn't want to have any cantankerous conversations with the guy. I didn't want to up him in a conversation. I just wanted him to do what my buddies who debriefed me on the whole thing in 1991, who work for NASA at the pretty pristine levels, had told me. But he was outclassed in 2 seconds, in a second, because I didn't reply back, well, fuck you, dude. You know, would have been easy. Would have been easy to do it, and even in an upper class way, I think. But I didn't fall for it. That helped. I let him have his little moment, right? But you get that. There's been a lot of name calling in the last, I'd say, 4.5 years. Many before that, of course, but really, really bad in the last 4.5 divide and conquer years. And again, when it's fresh and it's brand new, that's when we don't really have our shit together. Someone's hitting you from an angle that's a shocker. What did you just say? What did you just say to me? You know? And again, locked in a box with a bunch of prisoners, you got to handle it a whole different way. But hopefully most of you aren't there. On the outside world, is it that important to you? What's interesting about these true bruisers, these guys who are just death machines who get out of prison and figure out that they don't want to ever go back inside. Not that they can't handle themselves. Trust me, man. We just watched Fresh Out by Big Herc. 916, man. It's a channel on YouTube. There's 2 channels. Fresh Out is the channel talking to the prisoners. But these dudes will talk about how they'll be in public and some guy will totally lip off to them who's obviously a pussycat. And these guys are monsters. I mean, physically even more monstrous because they couldn't work out in prison properly. So they get out and they fill their bodies with nutrition and they just harden up like Marvel characters. And I listened to one guy who gives advice. He's this fucking totally yoked out white guy. I think San Diego, covered in tattoos. He's amazing. And he just said, you know, he's with his family once. He's with his daughter, I think. And some guy was lipping off to him. And he was just like, you got to blow that off because it's not worth it. It's not worth catching a case and doing something stupid. Can I kill the guy with one punch? Yeah, of course. But why do that? It's stupid. Now, what's interesting about what he is actually revealing in that algorithm is that he has learned about a pause before he reacts because of consequences that he did. He paid, I think this guy did several years in prison, maybe up to 10, maybe. I don't want to say that incorrectly. That's why I'm not mentioning his name. But he just realized, you know, being a free man is way, way better than being in prison. And there's, man, I tell you, when you experience wisdom, and you realize that you're experiencing wisdom and it's not inside you, it's inside the other person you're talking to, and you're the one that for that various moment in time, you didn't have any wisdom in you, or at least you weren't exuding it. It's a very interesting thing. You see it in movies all the time, and sadly it's not in reality as often. And I got a buddy of mine who is trying to help another friend of ours who's very tough to handle sometimes. And our mutual friend struggles with drug use and just gets a little crazy. And so I'll go over to visit my buddy and he won't be in a good mood, but he knows. Actually, sometimes he doesn't know he's in a good mood. This is where the point gets better. This is where I can kind of help. I'm in a really good mood and I'm not dealing with that situation. So I think, okay, I'm the shock absorber. I'm there to provide my buddy with patience and understanding as he's maybe, you know, being even short with me in this situation. And then what it took is a few times for me to go, man, you really seem cranky today, you know, or you know, what's up, you know, and damn it, you know, this thing's happening and that's happening. And, you know, everyone has like a few things. And then as soon as I acknowledge it to him, as friendly as I possibly can, we love each other's buds, right? He looks at me, he's like, I'm sorry, man, you know, I've just got this thing. And then all of a sudden, within like a minute, he's all calmed down and he's the sweetest guy on planet Earth. And I've had people do this to me, but it's the thing where you blow up on someone you love. And instead of getting offended, but you might still be a little offended inside, meaning angry. And they basically look at you and they just go, what's wrong? And they just use a voice that's like, right? And you're like, oh God, that felt kind of good, you know? And then you're like, I'm sorry, you know? And believe me, I know that, like, if you guys watch Happy Days when you grew up, you're familiar with Henry Winkler's character, the Fonz. You could never say he was sorry. You could pronounce the word. It was the funniest little recurring theme with his character. Dudes are like that, for sure. Probably some women, too. Mostly guys. But I tell you what, dudes, if you are truly sorry for something that you've done, saying it will make you feel amazing. And saying it actually erases or decouples that almost regrettable moment from your life and lets it roll downstream. The more you can make your apology or put an apology after you're saying, I mean, saying you're sorry is sort of the intro, precursor, preface to an apology. But if you can apologize after that and make it as specific and as accurate as possible, meaning everything you just did to the other person, how you made them feel, goes in the apology. I'm sorry, I treated you like crap just there. I don't mean to. I love you to death, you know. Wow, man, you get a hug. You get something else. And that negative moment flips to a positive in a few seconds. And that's something I learned from James Burrows' shows, both, or was it Taxi, Cheers, and Frasier. One of the reoccurring themes in all three of those shows is that when someone offended someone else and he made them very angry, eventually the character would go, I'm sorry. I just da 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 da. It's over and over and over again. And when I finally marathon those shows, still got to finish the last season of Taxi, Dave. I started trying it out in my own life, and I was like, oh my God, that feels amazing. That feels great. And it just diffuses the situation, gets everything back on track. Definitely makes you mature. Trust me. It's definitely a trophy to your development. So why not do it? But now let me introduce the abstract concept of the black apple. Quick review for the non-listeners. The black apple is a complex definition of, I'm just going to be absolutely frank, it's most powerful when you think about it like this. There is a life force out there that lives among us. You can get religious with it if you like. I sometimes call it the demons, just because it's a fun little word that you instantaneously know what I'm talking about. It doesn't have to be, though. It's a life force that feeds off of our electrical force. And when we exude high impact emotions, it loves those emotions. And like I always say, it's easier to create a bunch of negative emotions and sip just a little bit out of the cup than to have a beautiful emotion of elation where you drink the whole mug at once. They can't orchestrate the beautiful high-end chain of events to create the mug drinking exercise. You meeting the person of your life, they can't arrange, but they can make you suspicious. They can make you explode. They take a little thing and they blow it up. They know your whole life, man. They can walk right into your brain and go, ah. And the way it works is very simple. And once you test this out, it will change your life. I guarantee it. Sorry, listeners, we got to re-explain this. Because this is going to have pregnant pauses and reaction time being slowed down is going to cut this thing off from your life forever. Okay? You'll still see things, but you'll laugh it off because you got a pause in there that goes, was that me? No, it wasn't me. That's something else coming at me, right? The way it works is like this. I ask you if you love someone that you love. And you'll look inside your chest and you will burp out that feeling into words and you'll say, yes, I totally love my mother. I totally love myself. I love my kid. I totally love them. It comes from right in here. Do you like Star Wars? Oh, man, yeah. And it comes from inside your chest, inside your soul, and it spills out of your mouth in words. Now, the species that's completely different is suspicion. I wonder what he's doing. I wonder what she's doing. Why would they even do that to me? And you get this outside projection at you. It doesn't come from the heart where you live. It comes from the outside. This other force, this other life force that is feeding off of it, right? And you take it in as a reality, if you do. And it will corrupt your brain like a bad virus in a computer. How does a virus in a computer work? You put it in the computer and then you destroy the insides. And eventually it's just going, click, click, and your data is gone. But if you didn't put it in your computer, it doesn't get to do anything. You could have the world's worst virus on a floppy, an old 3.5 inch floppy, and put it right on top of your computer with the floppy drive right in front of you, still have one. And it would never infect your computer as long as you don't put it inside. So, let's say you're aware of the black apple phenomenon and you're like some of the commenters that said, holy crap, this is letting me completely control my own mind and all the negativity is just drifting away. If this is truly some intelligent life force, which it seems to behave that way when I talk to people and get them to recognize it, they're like, that's a really weird concept, but you're absolutely right. Some of the listeners got it right away. As soon as you stop reacting to its manipulation, the outside projection of concepts and realities towards you, they don't get to do anything to you. The virus never goes in the computer. Well, as I was doing that episode, I forgot to say the word react. It didn't occur to me that that's exactly the paradigm that's causing the problem. And some of you might experience this again in Twilight Zone when you're about to go to bed. When you're half conscious and half asleep, that's Twilight Zone. It's also an amazing show from the 60s. You will all of a sudden have a story projected in your mind that you were mean to somebody or you didn't pay a bill. And then a couple seconds later, you'll have this shivering panic attack. I don't have these anymore, but I used to. And I've even had situations where it was like, I said something wrong to somebody. I have that like, oh my God, I've got to call him tomorrow and apologize. And then a microsecond later, I go, wait a minute. None of that's true. I didn't do that. We haven't even talked in a year. Or whatever, something ridiculous like that, right? Well, if you have a habit of putting a pause between your reaction / exception of data into your brain. Again, we're not talking about fight or flight, the dog's coming at you, the wolf's coming at you, some guy's pointing a gun in your face and you take it out of his hand. That's totally different. We're talking about intellectual exchange of information or black apple exercises. You get to suddenly cut off your id from anything that makes your id panic. Remember, Freud always talked about that id. And, it's funny, they talked about Freud on both Cheers and Frasier, because Frasier and his wife were psychiatrists, right? And they would say, oh man, Freud's been completely deprecated by other forms of psychotherapy and that kind of stuff. And maybe that's true to the point where it doesn't help anyone anymore. But I think the 3 layers of your consciousness explained by Freud being the id, which is your inner child, your character, which is who you really are as a human being, and then your persona, which is what you put on to the rest of the world. Absolutely brilliant categorization. I think that without Freud, most people probably subconsciously realized the character and the persona. We all kind of knew, no matter what year it was, what century it was, once we could start holding our pinky up while we drank our tea, we understood that we pretended to be someone in public, and then we were really someone behind closed doors. And within a family context, you absolutely see that, because you see your mom and dad go to the door to answer it to a stranger, and you're like, oh, can I help you? And afterwards, like, stupid git. But Freud always said that the id was the part of your mind that can be absolutely terrifying. It is the child, and it really is that sort of bizarre little soup, which I think has to do with the way I see it is, it's sort of that, God, my analogy would be a forbidden planet. Tim, this is for you. When they open the door to look at the power plant of the Krill, this unknown society, this alien society lived inside the bowels of this planet. And they open this door and he says, don't look into the reactor. Look into the reflector that shows you what the reactor is, because if you look in there, you're going to die. It was this cool freaking idea from 1956. That's sort of your id in there. But it's also sort of perhaps the juncture between your soul and your body. It's a very chaotic place because it's trying to sort out everything you've ever been in your entire existence, perhaps in previous lives. It's the data stream from the entire universe, of which if you were to conceive the universe at 1 second, you would have the Douglas Adams total perspective vortex and just freeze up, proving to you how infinitely insignificant you are to the entire universe all at once. Infinitely small. The definition of you on planet Earth was an invisible dot, infinitely small. The more you make the core of your subconscious healthy, in my opinion, the less this reaction time situation where you have this need to just knee-jerk some response. That's a cliche in America. I just knee-jerked and I did something stupid. The impulse buy, where you brought something home that you're like, what the hell did I buy this for? Oh, that's right, I'm a hoarder. I mean, just think of a hoarder. If a hoarder could actually insert a pause between purchasing something and bringing it home, if they weren't mentally ill for some reason, they could say, well, I already own 4, George Foreman grills, and I don't even use the other 3 that are in the box. You wouldn't buy a 5th one to bring it home. But there is no pregnant pause. It's the euphoric nature of what could be, the what-ifs of the world. No cross-referencing the pile of crap in their backyard they've never done anything with. The fact that in the archetype of their entire life, they've never resurrected a piece of trash into something useful, not once. But they've brought home a million items thinking at some point they're going to find out what to do with it. Returning back to a almost Cro-Magnon human being that goes, stuff. I think you guys all know that every single one of you that can hear my voice are good at least one thing that most people aren't good at. whatever that is. Playing a video game doesn't have any productivity involved with it. But you play that one game better than anybody. Maybe it's a coin-op game. Maybe it's Dig Dug from back in the day. But you're just the best at that game. And no one else can figure out how good you are. How you became so good. How you are so good. Could be building cabinets. Could be programming a computer. Whatever it is. But to you, it's not hard at all. For whatever reason, it's super simple. You know that that's a reality to every single person's life that's reached a certain age. But here's what I find really weird. People don't take that reality that they understand about themselves and apply it to everything else that they would ever want to do. At some point, now again, there's things that are age restricted, right? But if it's just intellectual know-how, mathematics, in case that's something you're interested in, or whatever the hell is intimidating you, everywhere in the world, there's a professor, a teacher, a master who knows it like the back of their hand, and it's not a big deal. To them, it's easy. To you, it's terrifying. One reason why I try to be a master of many trades, jack of a lot more than that, is that I don't look at anything like that. I just say, I guess I just need to figure it out. Because there's probably millions of people in the world that do this thing every single day, and to them, it's really easy. And there are obviously careers out there that are tough in different ways. You're an underwater welder. It's just formidable environments and that kind of thing. So there's just tough physical jobs. I'm not talking about being a mover or something like that. It breaks your back eventually, right? Just talking about using Blender 3D or whatever. And the one thing I'm learning too, and the reason why I'm telling you this is because this pause paradigm, this reaction time paradigm is allowing you to protect who you are as a person. Both, if you will, as a metaphor, let's say you react quickly and you react badly, and you know that you did that. To you, in some way, shape, or form, forget the religious overtones of what I'm saying, but it's essentially a sin that you have committed against yourself because you're better than what you just did. But now, it's written in your book of time. It's a degree in something that you don't want a degree in. Being a jerk. How do you get good at something? Well, what's the inverse statement? Or what do I always say about, bad habits? You're only good at what you do. Well, that's both for the bad things and that's for the good things. The more that you practice this pregnant pause thing, slowing down your reaction time, looking at a post on Facebook, satiate perhaps yourself and writing the reply, then read it, give yourself some time, maybe even go to lunch, don't even post it, lock your computer, and come back and read it again and go, God, how embarrassing is that? Erase, scroll away, and you never ever reply. You save yourself from that regret. Believe me, it's worth it. Now, there are times when you have to take sort of precautionary measures. Let's say you have a friend that won't get out of your face. I say friend. I would assume they're losing their friendship credit with you, going back to sort of like acquaintance. But the idea is that and this is pretty rare, I think, in the world, but they're constant one to talk to you about their religion or their, which is either politics or true religion. They're talking to you, and you're like, dude, I understand how you feel about that. We disagree, but I respect the fact that we think differently in this area. Don't read any judgment into it. To each their own. You've had a completely different life than my life. So I understand why you are a different person than me at this point. But I'd like to preserve our friendship. And so if we could just not really bring that one up, it would be great. Don't think for a second I'm minimizing how important that is to you, but there's a whole bunch of other things that we talked about before this that made us friends. And that's what I'd like to stick to, I have extremely, extremely close friends that are absolutely opposite thinkers of me. And Some of them I think we could probably get into an argument if someone else forced us to have the conversation, like under gunpoint. And most of my friends, like we just go look at the gunman and go, well, we can talk forever, but we're not going to get into an argument because we already understand our differences and we respect where the other person's coming from. And a lot of these things are just choices. Maybe it's the medical choice you make for your body. It's up to you, man. It's up to you. But this whole thing is predicated and instantiated by matters of high polarity being pushed into our lives. What if no one ever mentioned abortion in the public social media? Not in the press, not in magazines, network news, social media, all that stuff. It just doesn't come up. Okay, then where's it going to come up? Well, if it didn't get inserted in everyone's mind, everyone might go back to the way it was. If you need one, you make your own decision up. There you go. It's your private business anyway. I shouldn't have any say in that unless I'm the father of your child, right? Or you need my help in the process. Then we can have the conversation about what we think about the whole thing. Gun rights, racism. Remember Morgan Freeman told Don Lemon to go fuck himself on TV about the whole thing. Stop talking about it. Stop trying to make it something that it's not. So what I want to make sure that I leave you guys with is this idea that the internet is now 25 years old. The specialists that use it as a medium to manipulate us, well, it's child's play now. It's child's play because look how stupid we are online, putting our security question answers into social media feeds with foreigners, meaning people we don't even know. I don't mean from another country necessarily. But you want to talk about Russian hackers? Oh my God. China would just be putting together a group. Some local hacker group just puts together some page that's asking questions. And, maybe it's 90% some other benign questions, but 10% of them are your security questions. You start playing that movie, Michael Douglas, The Game. They milked the guy for all of his information. By the way, if you haven't seen Michael Douglas, The Game movie, you are in for a treat, man. Doesn't matter if you're a girl or a boy, it'll get you. It's a good one. Don't let anyone tell you what's going on in that film. Just watch it. It's fantastic. But that movie is also predicated on getting him to react faster and faster and faster in the film, challenging him in new ways that make him more impulsive, because his last one was, say, 8 seconds, the next one's 7, 6, until the point it gets to be instantaneous. If you watch, I'm just going to do one more analogy here, at least, but I'm a boxer fan. I just love boxing, at least when I think it's real. And the best boxers in the world are the ones that, except for like a Mike Tyson, that just knows he can knock you out, and it's just a matter of him finding the opening, But even he's a genius with all previous fights. He knows all previous fights before he became a boxer. That's what Customato made him do, is study all the old masters. So he knew exactly what to do. And then he found his own, double right hook to knock you out. But it's the methodical boxers that become the legends. The guys that run across the mat, they're done. Same thing with UFC, man. You study while you're in there. You only watch so many videos. The guy could change up his style. You're looking for him to try to mislead you into a style he's actually not going to fight in, making you think, oh, he's going that way. Oh, boom, I got nailed. Chess. Chess is a beautiful thing. Tim just reminded me that chess is a beautiful thing because you aren't just reacting to every play. If you do that, you're going to get had. You're going to get mopped up in the least amount of moves to mop you up. But the more you think about it and you're seeing all the pieces that are out there and thinking, if I go here, then I can go there. So on and so forth. It makes you better. I told the old story about my daughter playing The Sims. She played Sim 1. She absolutely loved it. She was killing that game. She's like 11. Then Sim 2 came out. She's 12. And they had the ability to have kids. And being the best at the game in the family, which is saying quite a bit, she went off to the hardest family that you could start out with, which was, I think, a pregnant woman with a kid. I think even I think she had, so very soon into the game, she ends up having a baby. This is a single mother with a child and a baby. I think that's the way it worked. And my God, she couldn't beat it. She kept trying to send the mother off to work, but then she had to hire a nanny. She's running out of money. And I finally walked in after about 3 months of her trying to get through this damn thing. In fact, it wasn't even probably 3 weeks. I said, well, how you doing? And she was just like this, looking at the computer, leaning on her fist. And she goes, you know what? She goes, you got to get married before you have kids. I was like, wow, thank you, Will Wright. She had reacted without thinking because she was the best and learned a very valuable lesson. And of course, she drifted off to the other families and was killing it again. She had to get the mom outside to flirt with the guy, get that dude to start paying some bills. I don't know about you. I mean, if you have parents that taught you this kind of stuff, then you are definitely a fortunate person. And I celebrate you and I envy you at the same exact time. It's fantastic. Hopefully, if you had any kids, you raise them the same. If you have young parents like I did, which there's definite benefits of having young parents, but if you have slightly older parents that are engaging, you can get these kind of lessons from them, maybe a grandparent or something. But the thing about our parents, if they're not just truly trying to teach you something, and if they teach you out of context, if I were to tell my daughter at some point, okay, when someone asks you a question, I want you to stop, think about it, make sure you got the right answer and reply. Maybe my kid's pretty smart, so maybe she would have gotten it totally out of context. She never even had experienced that yet. I don't know. It's probably 50-50 that the kid would understand that kind of thing. I think if I was a kid and like before I'd ever engaged in debates with anyone and my father had come up to me and said this, which he didn't, which I don't blame him. It's a really high-end concept. I may have just went, okay, and then not understood it and then not practiced it unless I could remember his words when I made my first mistake reacting too quickly. We all kind of figure this out over time. But then again, the age of your body, the age of your vessel has nothing to do with the sophistication of your mind. That is beat into you by society. If you're tough on yourself, maybe you can kind of speed it up when you're all by yourself. Maybe you're inquisitive and you kind of look at refined people and go, man, why do I think that person's refined? I said this analogy a couple times in other episodes, but the dude who invented this American software product called TurboTax, I don't even know if it exists in other countries. It was originally called Macintax because it was named after every piece of software on the Mac was called Mac and something. So that was a little thing. But anyway, a guy named Michael Morgan. I assume he's still alive. Don't know. Wasn't that old when I met him. Harvard grad. He had a reputation because he very rarely came in the office. And they said, you could ask Michael Morgan, what's 2 + 2 and what's the answer to life, the universe, and everything. He would take the same amount of time to answer the question, and he would be right about both of them. And I will just tell you, I remember in my mind like it was a week ago, I'd say. I remember asking him questions because he would come into the office because he was the inventor. He was just like Willy Wonka. He'd be at home working. He'd invent all the software, all the tools that we had to learn how to use. And people would ask him questions. Or he'd have a little problem with the computer that we had set up for him. And he would kind of put his hand up to his mouth and he'd just sit there and, He'd answer the question. Or think up the solution right then and there. He'd be like, oh, I know what it is. Bing, 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 ping, and it'd be fixed. Wow. I mean, the dude maybe was in his late 30s, I think, when I met him. I was my late 20s. That's cool, man. That's cool. That's a master at work. We want to be one of those folks, trust me. And then if you are being more impulsive at a particular time in your life, you know you're being impulsive, and you're probably aware that you're probably in a very safe environment where you're being impulsive. Maybe it's your wedding and you're on the dance floor. Or maybe you're in Hawaii and you're running around on the beach and it's just like, man, I'm just going to do whatever comes to mind because I'm safe. Nothing can go wrong. Famous last words, right? The reason why I made this episode is that I had it in my list of episodes, I don't know, probably last year. And I was having a dinner with a friend of mine and she said, people react too much, and I said, she was giving me an example where someone was knee-jerking some sort of response and embarrassing the crap out of themselves. And I said, it's really funny because I got an episode written down on my phone that I should do this episode. And I said, it's just so cerebral. I've done a lot of those lately. Try not to make it all this way, right? And she just looked at me. She goes, make that episode. We got to get this out. So here we are. So hopefully that was useful to you. I'd be interested in any of your comments, experiences with this sort of thing. If you haven't been to deepthoughtsradio.com, please go. Just bookmark it in case we get moved around. I will give you an update if you're not a member of our Facebook group. I applied for remonetization in October 31st of 2020. And just today, which would have been the 6/2, 2021, they finally sent me back, sorry, we can't monetize your channel again because you don't meet our community whatever, right? So I went up and kind of reviewed the application, took a screenshot, put it on our Facebook group page, and it said I met all the subscription requirements and all the viewing hour requirements, which are high, people. But above it said, your content, it says harmful content, Really funny how that works, right? You only censor the truth, right? So, just so you know, that's our update. But up on the site, you have everything searchable, all the category lists. If you like a particular type of episode, ones like this, the ones not like this, you can find everything up there. So you have video, audio, social media, all new Remastered Season 1, a store. I'm going to be putting up some new shirts that won't necessarily, well, it'll be different. They'll be cool. They're going to be UFO based because of all this UAP stuff. So keep your eyes open for it. I'll hopefully have a couple up there before. I think you'll get the gist. I just want to make sure the art style is correct. Obviously, we have our Patreon and PayPal folks because we cannot generate any money from this channel. The entire amount of money this channel raised, and I can't remember, must have been 4 seasons I think we had, was $1,605, I think, total. And that's, of course, with very low subscriptions. The subs are getting creamed, so I just put it in my last episode, but you guys are subscribing like crazy, and then they're knocking you down. And so I thought they were trying to use that as a metric for not remonetizing, but they're just throwing people out, and they're doing it in 5 packs. So in a matter of 30 minutes, 5 people will join and 5 people will go away. Refresh 5, gone. Always in 5s, sometimes 10. So that's their algorithm. They're playing games. So I would like to ask a favor, which is just find an episode. If you got Moon People, 520 is your gold. People want solutions to cancer, go get the cancer episode. But whatever you think will float their boat. Every time I share it with people who are awake, they come on board for life, and we have conversations about episodes forever. So I think there's a bunch of good stuff out there for folks. So if you could do me a favor, if we could find a way to get this into an artery with like 1,000 subscribers in a week, which would be phenomenal. They just can't stop that. They can, but it'd be really difficult when the chatter's out there. So if you have social media out there, post it. Post episodes out there that you think will be linchpins to people's interests. Anyway, take care of yourself and someone else, and I'll see you in the next Deep Thoughts. Over now.